Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we are joined by Spencer Hawes himself. We are talking all about the Niche Pursuits website. That's nichepursuits.com. Now, 1 year ago, I interviewed Spencer on this podcast, and he talked about his plans for 2022 and his plans to focus his efforts on growing nichepursuits.com. Here we are 1 year later, and we have Spencer on to talk all about the growth that Niche Pursuits has experienced. What kind of growth are we talking about? We're talking about over 500% growth from organic search traffic. And how did Spencer go about doing that? Well, for starters, he went on a big content prune by deleting a bunch of old content that wasn't really evergreen. We talk about how he chose those articles and which ones he focused on deleting. He also updated over 100 old articles. He talks about his criteria that he went through to pick which articles to update, how he updated them, what software tools he used for those updating. And we also drill into get some pretty good clarity on how much of a traffic boost he got just by updating those articles. Obviously, there's other factors that play into it that can't be ignored, but then we move into talking about the new content, and that's really where the bulk of the growth has come from. Spencer set out to publish 1,000 articles in 1 year on nichepursuits.com and came very close. In the end, he published 878 new articles. Obviously, that took an entire team of writers, and so we spend the second half of the conversation drilling into what it looks like to outsource content at scale, the processes you need, the mentality you need, some of the mistakes that he made, and then the realizations that came from that. And then at the end, we really talk about how it all ties together, about how the growth in organic search traffic that he receives, which now nichepursuits.com is breaking 20,000 page views a day. But that growth isn't just benefiting his website, how that growth spills over into other areas of the Niche Pursuits brand and other businesses of his. And we really finished the conversation by talking about the value of building a brand over just, say, a website. So for those of you who have listened to this podcast for a while, you'll obviously be very familiar with the Niche Pursuits website. So it's really cool. It's not just a story about growth. It's a story about growth on a website that you're probably pretty familiar with. And it's a really fun one. I hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, it's Spencer Hawes here, founder of the Niche Pursuits podcast. So I recently read a Twitter thread asking about the most underrated strategy in SEO. One of the most common answers given was internal link building. The reason? Well, sometimes people put so much emphasis on external links, they forget that not only do internal links provide relevancy and SEO benefits, but that Google actually encourages you to build internal links. Now, I get it. Building internal links can often feel time-consuming and boring. And that's why I created Link Whisper. Link Whisper is a powerful WordPress plugin that makes building internal links so much faster and easier. You can quickly get relevant internal link suggestions as you write, and with the simple check of a box, add one or multiple internal links to your articles. And perhaps my favorite time saver is the ability to see how many internal links all my articles have, and to quickly get new internal link suggestions to articles I want to boost in Google. With comprehensive internal link reporting and the ability to add links with the simple check of a box, I can't even imagine going back to building internal links manually. Link Whisper is by far the most powerful, effective, and easiest to use internal link building tool out there. Give it a try, and if you don't agree, I'll give you your money back, no questions asked. In fact, for podcast listeners only, I'm offering a $15 off discount. Just go to linkwhisper.com and use discount code PODCAST at checkout to save $15. So as the creator of Link Whisper, I might be a little biased, but I highly recommend that you head over to linkwhisper.com today to check it out. Again, that's linkwhisper.com, and be sure to use discount code PODCAST at checkout. Thanks again.
Welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today, we are joined by Spencer Hawes, the founder of this very podcast that you're listening to. Spencer, welcome on board.
Hey, Jared, it is good to be back. on my own podcast, as odd as that is, but you are now the host. You're doing a great job. I'm excited to come back and just share an update on my story.
I think it's great. Obviously, you and I are in lockstep. We both got the memo on wearing green today. So
Yes.
green is the theme. And aside from the V-neck versus the straight neck, you and I might be wearing the same shirt. So I think we're gonna have a good one today.
That's right. You also wearing pajama pants, or is that just me?
That's just you. No, I had to
Okay.
retire
All right.
those post holidays. I'm now back to shorts.
That's next level stuff, right? Yeah.
Hey, so there's so many things that we could catch up on because it's been a full year since you and I hung out on the podcast and chatted. I guess in theory I'm interviewing you today,
Yeah.
but there's so many things we could talk about. But I think perhaps the most intriguing thing that we should focus on is looking back 1 year ago when we were last on the podcast together, and basically we walked through the process that you were going to go through in 2022 of choosing where to spend your time, removing yourself from certain areas of the business, and then from basically to put time towards growing nichepursuits.com. Without burying the lead, I mean, let's talk about how that's going and what happened in 2022 as a result of that.
Right. So that's exactly right. About a year ago, I had decided, you know what? I've had so many projects, lots of different things that I had been working on, but I had never really put my main focus on nichepursuits.com and growing it. What would happen if I put all my focus there, tried to remove myself as the bottleneck from the business? How much could it grow? And people can listen to that podcast that I recorded a year ago. So this is really an update on that podcast. What happened when I tried to remove myself, right? I had just sold off a couple of niche sites, Niche Site Project 4. I finally had the time. Okay, my main focus is niche pursuits. So the end result is that I am blown away by the traffic growth. The traffic itself, I can get into the numbers. The overall traffic has grown like 350%.
Wow.
And the organic traffic has grown by over 500%, right? So the traffic from Google. And I guess maybe I'll try to share some exact numbers here. So at the end of last year, right after, we had kind of recorded the podcast back in December, my site was getting something around, call it around maybe 2,500 to 3,000 sessions a day, right? Now my site is regularly getting 15, 16,000 sessions a day, right? So I guess if you look at those numbers, that's more than a 5x growth. And yesterday got over 21,000 sessions.
Wow.
Right? And things appear to be on a very nice trajectory. I actually think today might be higher than yesterday. So it's just continuing to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the bulk of that is organic traffic from Google. So that's the highlight. Let's jump into it. Whatever you want to ask, Jared.
Okay, I have a lot of questions about the details. I have taken some notes coming here. And the beauty about it is that I've kind of gotten a moonlight along the way by whether, seeing stuff you've tweeted about throughout the year, having conversations with you offline throughout the year. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle in a lot of the things that I think you were testing, doing, et cetera, and kind of also see how that played into your strategy. I mean, let me start with a big, broad question. And I feel like maybe a lot of people might feel this way. Now, I don't actually work for Niche Pursuits. I run my own marketing agency. I just host this podcast.
That's right.
I get a lot of people who do think I work directly for you and email me about blog content and stuff. But as a result, I kind of have a third-party view of nichepursuits.com. And I've watched Niche Pursuits grow over the years. And I feel like my perception is that Niche Pursuits was just rocking and rolling prior to this year, that you were already doing very well, that you were already getting a lot of traffic. You've now 5x'd it. Like, what were you leaving off the table prior that you were now able to go after? And I'm asking from kind of a broad perspective, kind of shape maybe the strategy you engaged to get this growth.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer sort of the two
to get this growth.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer sort of the two parts of your question. Is one, you thought Niche Pursuits was already doing well. And it was. In terms of my email list is huge. I've grown it a lot. I would call that almost a bigger asset than my website, for example. But a lot of the content that I've done previously is like a lot of my niche site projects. Those things tend to not necessarily go viral, but do really well on social media, is very shareable. but does not attract a lot of organic traffic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Okay.
sense.
And so it does very well in terms of I built a great following, a great brand, right? This YouTube channel, the podcast, my email list is massive, right? But there's not a lot of people that are continuing to search for a lot of my old posts. They weren't SEO friendly posts. A lot of them. It was like,
So
hey,
Niche Site Project 2, call number 4 with Samara just wasn't really ranking that well 5 years later.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that
A
makes
lot of the
sense.
content was outdated, and I realized that. So over even the last 2 to 3 years, I knew that I needed to start writing more SEO targeted content to really turn Niche Pursuits into an organic traffic engine that I
Right.
knew it could be, because it's got a lot of great authority, a lot of great links. And so I started to write some of those SEO articles myself. I even hired a couple of writers, but it's very slow when I'm doing it a lot myself. So that was a big part of it. Like, I just got to remove myself. I got to go all in. I got to believe in this site. I got to believe that the authority, the process that I know of how to rank other websites that I've done is going to work on Niche Pursuits. And so that's what I changed, is like, okay, no more producing all the content that is like, it can expire and is old, right? I'm focusing on evergreen content, and I'm going big,
Mhm.
right? And so that's the shift that I made, is just producing a lot more content. I hired, gosh, over 20 writers to
Wow.
help produce all the content. And I guess since we're talking about it, I'll just share the numbers. I'm going to look at it. I believe I just tweeted about this yesterday. 878 total articles were published in 2022 on nichepursuits.com.
That's a ton.
And that
I didn't
is
realize you
way
published
more
anywhere.
content than I've ever published in any previous year.
That's substantial. That makes a ton of sense. A lot of what probably a lot of people know Niche Pursuits for historically is these different types of things that work really well on social media, but don't drive long-term evergreen traffic. Okay,
Exactly.
good. So that sets the stage. You're removing yourself and focusing on evergreen content. You wrote 900 articles in essence, hired 20 writers.
Yep.
How did you develop a process for that? And did you start by maybe walk us through the beginning phases and the dichotomy that probably existed between going through a lot of this old content on your site that wasn't evergreen focused and then wanting to publish new SEO focused content, and where you kind of split that up and then how you set out to do that?
Right. Yeah. So there was a ton of old content. I'll just touch on that briefly, that I did do a lot of cleanup. There was a lot of updates. Nobody cared about Niche Site Project 1, month 3, right? It wasn't getting any organic traffic. And so basically I looked at two things to actually delete a lot of content: is was it getting any traffic, and did it have any good links, right? And if it had good links, I might actually 301 redirect it to a relevant page
Yep.
or to the home page. Or if it had neither of those, I'd just hit delete, right? And so I did remove a lot of content. So there was a lot of cleanup of the site, architecture wise, link wise, category wise, that went into sort of setting the stage for this, that I'm happy to dive into that in more detail as well. But then the other part is setting up all these standard operating procedures for, like, okay, it's going beyond me and one or two writers that I've kind of dabbled with in the past to, like, yeah, let's hire 20 people and see what we can do. Really, my goal at the beginning of the year was to publish 1,000 articles. I fell just short of that, but still a significant number of articles. And so I knew that I needed these standard operating procedures so that I could hire someone not only to write the content, but to actually edit and be able to publish that content, even if I wasn't around,
Yeah.
right? When you're looking at the number of like 3, 4 articles every day potentially getting published, like, that's basically all I could do every day if I were to read every article and edit
Yeah.
every article, even if I didn't write it. So I needed to have a team and system in place to be able to do all of that for me. And so I wrote out very detailed instructions for, like, here's the voice of Niche Pursuits. Here's the audience you're targeting. These are people that want to learn specifics, be very upfront and honest, etc. Right? I explained everything that I try to do when I write in a nice document, and it's in a Google spreadsheet that's kind of like checklist format. So when
Mhm.
authors write an article, they can look at, here's like 30 points, and here's some Loom videos, right? That explains things from voice to formatting to how to add links, etc.
All that.
All of that. And so we can jump into that process, but I had to truly just change my mind shift of, okay, it's no longer me doing this. How can I make it as easy as possible for people to do this for me without asking me questions every day? So I had to do tons of documentation.
Okay. I want to ask you about that. Let's just camp really quickly, because I think we can get through it quickly on this topic of deleting and purging old content. And then we can move into all the new content, because I think that probably was an initial thing that was done, and then you didn't really have to do it any longer. You cleaned up the site architecture, you got rid of a bunch of stuff. How can that be? Did you outsource any of that? Can that be outsourced? Because I mean, a lot of people will have sites and have websites that are, either they bought, and so there's a lot of old content that maybe wasn't intended for, or maybe it's just stuff that they've done over the years, kind of like you, and it's no longer the focus of the site. But updating content and deciding to delete it and all that, it's very nuanced and very difficult to outsource, I've found. So I'm curious if you were able to outsource any of that, or if you just decided to roll up your sleeves for that one-time project.
Yeah, I did all of that myself. I did not
Okay.
outsource it. I suppose it's maybe possible to outsource for a more standard website, but Niche Pursuits being my own blog, I had written almost 100% of every article on the site. I just had I had such a good understanding of every article that was published. And even some, like, I made decisions to not delete that, like, it just meant a lot to me.
It's personal. Yeah.
Like, I wrote this, I know nobody reads it anymore. It doesn't have any links. I don't care. I'm leaving it. I really enjoyed writing that, or it's really great. Right. And so there's just too much nuance there that I felt I couldn't outsource it. So I went through every article. I created a whole spreadsheet, and what I did is I actually exported all of the articles from Google Analytics. You can do that into a Google spreadsheet. They have a nice way to do that. And so it showed all the traffic, right? And so I essentially went to all the articles that didn't get a certain threshold. And I don't remember what that was, maybe 100 visitors a month or something, right? Everything below that is what I kind of looked at. Everything that was getting more than 100 visitors a month or a few visitors a day, I just kind of kept for the most part.
So you deleted a bunch of content.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're going to get into all the new content you created. Was there any work? Did you put any effort towards, okay, this content stays, but maybe it could be better. Maybe I need to update it. Maybe I need to target a new keyword. Did you do any content updating throughout 2022? And then we'll get into all the new content, all the 900 articles you published and all that.
Right. Yes, we did update a ton of content. I also have that number. It's like 119 or something like that. So it was over 100 articles were updated, refreshed. I don't know if I have the exact number.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
But
that's
it was over 100. Yeah, it's like 119 is what I want to say.
That's
articles.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was a content update process like? What did that look like for you? Were there certain things you were focusing on doing? Were there certain things that those 119 articles, like why they stood out to you to update, certain things you were looking at?
Yeah. So I have again a whole spreadsheet for this. I actually looked at two different things for updating, for choosing the articles to update. One was I just looked at my highest trafficked articles, right? I took like my 50 highest trafficked articles on the site. It's like, these are winners. Can we make them even bigger winners, right? If they weren't number one for like every keyword, which I don't know if any articles are ever number one for every keyword you're ranking, right? And it's older than a year, we would go back and update that. So that was at least half of them. Then the other half was more review type or money type pages, right? Maybe they're not getting a lot of traffic, but these are articles that have the potential or are making a lot of money already, and we'll go back and update that. The process, again, I had a spreadsheet. I had a couple of my authors that I had assigned to do this, that I would allow them to choose which article they wanted to update. So if something caught their eye, they just put their name next to it. They would go in and update it using Surfer SEO or Market Muse. I've used both throughout the year. They're doing with H2s, that sort of thing,
Yep.
right? So
Needs more words or needs less words or something like that.
exactly. And then sort of the final step of that is we would look at, can the article be monetized better? Are we missing affiliate links? Do we need to add a button in the introduction that says, hey, go try out this product, or add something in the sidebar? We do some custom sidebar call to actions, right? So we'd look at that as well.
I've got to imagine you track. You said you track pretty much everything so far I've asked you about. Did you track any of the performance that came with the articles you updated? Did those get, or is that a result of some of the organic traffic lift, the numbers you were sharing?
Absolutely. That is definitely some of the lift. I did track some of it initially. I wish I could say I had those updated numbers. I used to go in and sort of after, I believe it was 90 days, I was checking and seeing, and I may even still have a spreadsheet, but I don't know that I have any handy numbers to share.
Well, I know that a lot of your growth did come. I remember you posting a screenshot somewhere where you, and correct me if I'm wrong by the details, but you do track how much of your organic traffic was coming from your newer articles. And I saw that graph and I was always amazed, but it's so great when you're working with a site that's so authoritative. You can probably publish an article and, you're ranking within a day and you might be on page 1 within a week so I'm sure that a lot of your traffic did come from new content, but I'm always curious for an older site that has so much history, how effective article updating can probably be.
Yeah, it's very effective. And so I can just say, I can't give you specific numbers, but I can tell you generally that absolutely updating content has driven a lot of the traffic growth. Updating content has worked. And I've seen a nice lift on that.
Well,
and I do also track, I have a custom report, and this is in old Google Analytics. I don't know how to do it in Google Analytics 4 just yet, but you can create, I have a custom report that every new article that gets published in like 2022 gets added to this report. And so I can see the trends of, okay, my content that was published this year, how much traffic is that bringing in? And I should have done this right before the call, but I think I'm missing the last few weeks of articles on this report. So these numbers are higher, but I can tell you about 7,500 sessions a day are coming in from content that was published in 2022.
Well,
right?
That's because you were saying outside of yesterday, basically you're averaging about 15 to 16,000 sessions a day now.
That's right.
I mean, that's almost half.
That's almost half.
That's basically half. I mean,
yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That's what happens when you publish almost 1,000 articles, right? Doubled the content on the site, right? So more than doubled the content on the site, actually.
Yeah. But to your point, if we take out, just looking at my notes, if we take out the new articles, the 7,500 page views a day that come from the new articles, you're still sitting at 7,500 or 8,000 page views a day, which is still more than double the 3,000 page views or sessions a day you had a year ago.
Yep.
So
that's
if we just use
right.
back of the napkin math, updating content definitely works.
Definitely worked. And I think there's more to the story. Part of it, we touched on the restructure of the site, the categories. There was a lot of internal linking audits that happened. Of course, I used Link Whisper to do that, but that was part of my process when I removed content. A lot of the content that I kept that was performing well. And also when we do content updates, I go in and I audit the internal links and go, these are not relevant links. I'm going to remove a bunch of links that are pointing to this article, or I'm going to add new links to that, right? So I think that helps site-wide lift even stuff that we didn't update, right? So some of the articles got lifted as well by restructuring a lot of that. And just to piggyback on that, I also midway through the year did a whole site redesign.
That's right.
I did a new brand. It looks more professional. I feel like it's more shareable and it's a lot more mobile friendly. So I think all of that, the site restructure, new design, more mobile friendly, and everything else we've talked about all comes into play. Yeah,
it all plays in, right? Yeah, it's hard to say it's just one thing when you're working on a ton of things on it. I will say, and this is not a plug for Link Whisper that we talked about ahead of time, but I shared this on Twitter, I think last month or a couple months ago, about how I obviously it's a great tool for building internal links. I had never used it for removing internal links, but we got a client that had a ton of generic internal links, right? So every time, a general word was used in an article, they would internal link it to a variety of different places. And so the internal linking was really poor. And we were able to use Link Whisper really quickly to remove a lot of those internal links. And it definitely had an impact because now Google could better understand what each page is about because it wasn't just getting generic anchor text sent to it. So anyways, it's really powerful for that. I can
Yeah.
imagine it would speed it up.
Absolutely. And just the reporting overall, it helps when you're looking at your site overall. What do I need to improve? One thing is I just go into my reports and you can see every link, the number of inbound internal links. There's
Yep.
a report for that. You can just hit expand and very quickly browse to see, is this really the anchor text, right? You've got an article about ABC and the anchor text is XYZ, and you're like, that's really not what this article is about. Remove it, right? And so it makes it easy to remove a bunch of those or just analyze to go, gosh, this has 50 inbound internal links. Do I really need to be putting all that link juice on this article? I actually don't want to rank that much. And side note, that happens a lot. I have an article on niche pursuits. It's people can try and find it if they want, but it was a guest post that somebody, published on nichepursuits.com many years ago, 8-9 years ago, that was about building white hat internal links, right? But for whatever reason, a lot of my writers thought that would be a good article to link to. It's an article that has never ranked well. I am not really trying to get it to rank well. It's just a guest post. So finally I did an audit and saw it's got like, I don't remember how many, 30, 40 internal links. I'm like, I don't want to be sending link juice from these articles I am trying to rank on Google. Let's remove that link so they keep their page rank, instead of passing it to this other article. And so Link Whisper made that easy to do and just remove that. And again, not a plug for Link Whisper, but this was part of my process for that particular case. There's a setting you can go in, and I finally just did this. You can put that URL as do not ever suggest internal links to that page.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So and you can do categories. So I've actually got categories and that page that my authors will never see that as a suggested internal link again.
And I brought it up again just to kind of fine tune the point, but I brought it up because I think there's the classics you do when you update content, right? And we don't need to dive into all of those, but there's a lot of times things that people do miss when they're updating old content. And one of those is those internal links that are pointing to it. And unless you're like, you don't log into WordPress, open the page up and know what internal links are coming to it. So unless you're actually including that as a part of your process, that could very easily get missed in your updating of old content. So
yeah, absolutely. There's it's just important to look at everything, right? Have a fresh set of eyes, look at the content, the structures, new images maybe need to be added, just looking at that content every year ish. Especially your best performing content, and then of course the internal links is just so important.
Well, let's get into the 878 new articles you published. Again, quick back in the napkin math, you were 88% of the way to your goal of 1,000 articles, which is a tremendously lofty goal. When you set out to do 1,000 articles, was this like, did you sit down and kind of put together a keyword map and say, like, based on all of this, I think 1,000 articles is the right number for us? Was it more based on like an internal metric, or was it just kind of a big pie in the sky goal that said, we want to move the needle forward, I want to start publishing optimized content, and let's just come up with a nice big number?
Yeah, it's the latter. Just coming up with a big number. I do well when I commit to specific goals, and I like to go big when I'm feeling confident. And sometimes setting a big goal actually makes me feel more confident. I do this a lot with running, right? Setting a goal to run a marathon or run a marathon under a specific time. It's sometimes not until I set that goal of like, okay, I want to qualify for the Boston Marathon and I want to do it in 6 months. It's kind of scary. I set this big goal and then all of a sudden I get really motivated to train really hard and work towards that goal. Right. It's the exact same thing with what happened here on Niche Pursuits is I need to set kind of a big, scary goal, and 1,000 articles is like 5 times beyond what I thought maybe should be normal. And so let's do that. Why not? And I've got some other friends that maybe encourage me to set big goals because they're setting big, crazy goals with their websites as well. One friend in particular that also was publishing about 1,000 articles and he's just crushing it, right? I'm like, gosh, I want to see that trajectory of growth. And he just says, in order to do that, you got to publish a lot of content. There's just no way around it. And so I bit the bullet, I set the goal, and I set the number of 1,000 because, it's just that nice round number. It's this huge goal. And so once I committed to it, I had to hire. There's just no way around that. Yeah.
Did you, this is a decision that, probably every website owner listening right now has to face at some point, which is, do I start outsourcing to hit that next goal? Or do I keep doing it because I'm probably the best? I'm probably the most qualified. I know the brand and all those sorts of things. And there's the classic recommendations you could give on how to hire. And you already touched on some of them, the procedures you created, the processes you created. But were there any mistakes you made or things you might have learned along the way with outsourcing content on Niche Pursuits for really the first time ever, at least at scale?
Yeah, we went through a lot of growing pains. A lot of mistakes.
One you don't have to share all of them.
Yeah. One thing that I guess we maybe did well, and then I'll share the mistake that this didn't fix all of that. But one thing that I like to do is just hire quickly. You can spend a ton of time, and I've made this mistake in the past of, asking for all sorts of writing samples, maybe even, exchanging tons of emails, or maybe even getting on a call, right? With authors, right? If I'm trying to hire 20, 25 authors, that is like a full-time job. And so what I did is I posted the job and do my best to filter and say, this looks like a decent writer, and then just give them an assignment, a paid article. That is just the best way to know if they're actually a good writer. And so based on mistakes I'd made in the past, I pretty quickly just hired people and said, here, write this article. It's going live on Niche Pursuits, right? Like you're an author, I'm paying you for it. And then firing quickly, right? If they produce the article and it's not that great, either maybe don't publish the article and just let them, pay them anyways. So I learned that through some of the mistakes. But even that, once I turned over the reins to allow my senior editor to start hiring, because there is a lot of turnover with writers. We kept a nice core set, but there's still always 2 or 3 on the fringes that we need to be replacing. I turned over the reins of hiring to my senior editor, and he did a good job, but allowed some writers to stick around longer than they should have been allowed to stick around with. So that's some of the growing pains that we made this year, is not being more strict with some quality guidelines on certain authors. We probably should have let them go when we saw some initial mistakes in the first, 2 or 3 articles. Just let them go and try to find somebody different. So that is definitely some of the mistakes that we've made, because now we're left with several articles that need updates, that really weren't written that well, that probably just need to be scrapped or rewritten. And so that has been one growing pain. I'm trying to think of other things.
Well, let me ask you about that, because that dovetails nicely. Hiring more than 20 writers, because if you have about 20 writers and you've had to let a few go along the way, you've obviously hired even more than that. Like, what are some things at scale you've seen that mark a good writer? Have you seen any consistencies or anything stand out in the people you have that, like you said, make up your good core team of writers?
It's one of those things, you just know a good writer when you see him. It's hard to explain, but I know when I start reading an article, I can tell, within the first few paragraphs that this person just gets it, right? They write in a conversational style or just a style that's easy.
Hmm.
It's easy to read and understand. There's no fluff. That's a huge one. Um, you might get authors that say all the right things and they're smart, but there's just a lot of fluff. You can
Yeah.
read, half the article, and I was like, well, that could have been said in a paragraph. What did I really learn? And so a good article, a good writer, you just know it when you see it. And that's so bad to say, because I'm trying to train other people to do the same thing, and I haven't been able to successfully do that 100%.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's kind of no fluff, easy to read, meaning that their sentences are structured well. They're short. And then the third is content knowledge, or sort of niche knowledge
Expertise.
and
Yeah.
expertise. Niche pursuits is hard to hire for that. Somebody that just kind of gets the affiliate marketing world, SEO world. I can very quickly, when I read an article, go, you know what, this person has probably never done keyword research or actually tried to rank an article. And they're writing about something that's kind of sort of related to that, right? And so just, expertise kind of shows through pretty quickly if you are an expert
Yeah.
in your space.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I was curious if you had gone like on this big kind of training program, or if it was really more about hire experts and let the ones that want to write a lot of articles, like if they're doing a good job and they want to write a lot, let them just continue to pour over the content.
Yeah, that's the more accurate statement there. Is when I find people that are experts, I really latch onto them, give them as much work as they want, and try to focus on those good quality authors.
So you mentioned keyword research, perfect transition. Who did all the keyword research? Was it you doing all the keyword research? I gotta feel like that's something you was probably one of the last things that you would want to let go of, just knowing your background.
Yeah, it is. It is. I did pretty much all the keyword research. I went through and developed a nice keyword plan. I would kind of do it in batches of 100 to 200 keywords at a time is really what I would do, is go, okay, here's the next 100 keywords. I'd put it in a spreadsheet. The authors all had access to that spreadsheet, so they could pick any of those 100 or 200 keywords that were available and assign themselves. So I would not, it eliminates a step, right?
Mhm.
I shared access to a Google spreadsheet where authors could do a lot of stuff, was helpful. So I would do all the keyword research. Towards the latter half of the year, I did have a senior editor help me do some keyword research, but I was still very much involved in, I would look at every single one of those keywords and approve or decline them before the author saw those. So
I've got to ask you because, and I'll give you a little context for it. Preparing for this interview, I knew we were talking about growth. I knew you published a lot of articles this year, and I knew we were going to be talking about that. So I popped niche pursuits into Ahrefs and was looking at the keywords. And I was kind of blown away. There's all sorts of topics I didn't even know about that that niche pursuits has published articles on. It now ranks really high. Some of these are top number one spots for high volume keywords. And it got me thinking about, man, there's some, feels like there's some real strategy, not just to finding good keywords, but when you're writing upwards of 1,000 articles, I mean, were you like, maybe just talk about the bigger picture of the research process, because it seems like you've almost gone in entirely new topical silos. It seems like you've really gone down into depth on really in-depth silos. I guess that's probably the best way to keep coming back to that. I didn't even really see prior to this year niche pursuits talking about.
right. Yeah, that's a great question. And that opens up a whole topic here that, I haven't really mentioned. And so historically, nichepursuits.com, it has been all about building niche websites,
Yes.
affiliate marketing, right? That is the core, and still, I feel, is the core. But that is an incredibly difficult market to rank for. When you
And a
start thinking,
fairly thin or
yes,
narrow one.
It is, right? So the fact that I was getting, call it 3,000 visitors a day in that space, it still put me as, one of the top blogs in that space, right? When you start looking at SEO blogs, right, like Backlinko, or WordPress blogs like WP Beginner or Moz, or right, all of a sudden you're competing in this insanely competitive market. And so I had to take an honest look, and it's like, okay, am I fine with getting 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 visitors a day, but getting this great targeted, super valuable traffic? Or do I want to build niche pursuits into something bigger that can get a lot more traffic and make money in perhaps other ways, right? And I chose the latter. And the only way to do that is to expand the topics that I would be covering.
Right.
And so I decided, you know what? What's tangentially related to affiliate marketing? Well, there's digital marketing as a whole, and that can uncover all kinds of topics. YouTube, Twitter, social media, right? So if you look at a lot of content I'm ranking for, it's stuff related to some of that. It also opens up sort of the silo of side hustles, right? What are some side hustles that people can be doing online besides affiliate marketing and SEO, right? And that opens up a ton of keywords, right? And so that did open up a lot. And so a lot of the traffic is coming from like, okay, what is a side hustle that a team can do online, right? Maybe that's not what the Niche Pursuits podcast listener, wants to hear about.
We haven't had one of those on. We haven't had one of those on yet.
Right. Is topics like, oh, a team could flip sneakers online, right? But there is a lot of people that do want to do that. And so I want Niche Pursuits to be kind of an authority on like, hey, these are legitimate business opportunities online that you can pursue. And if you happen to be ever building a website, join my email list, and I got lots of great digital marketing tips, right? Yeah, so that was part of it. And then the other big strategy was what I guess I'll call following Google's lead on that, right? So say I published a few hundred articles, then it's going back and looking at what worked really well with those few hundred articles. What type of article, is doing well, right? And so, and then follow that rabbit hole, right? Like, okay, if I publish some articles about YouTube or sort of low-cost business ideas, find more keywords related to that and or that type of keyword, that keyword structure, if you will. And so that became a lot of what I did as well. It's like, okay, Google's telling me that I should write about XYZ topic. I'm going to do that and just publish a ton of content about
Go
that.
all in on that.
Yeah.
On what Google's rewarding you with initially.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
When you came up with these new related silos, were you looking just at the keyword opportunities? We don't need to get into the rabbit hole on, volumes and difficulties and all that stuff, but was it more about the keyword, or were you also trying to align new and highly profitable monetization methods with those keywords as you were kind of looking around at which silos to go after?
Yeah. So it was sort of three different strategies. One is, like I said, what's already working well on Niche Pursuits, and how can I produce more of that content?
Right.
The other type of keyword is exactly like you said, what can I monetize well? What has a good, affiliate program that is related to my niche, right? Can I do a review of this software tool? And that can be a well monetized article. And a lot of, reviews, especially in the digital marketing space, don't get a lot of traffic, right? They're just typically low volume keywords that are hard to rank for, unfortunately, especially in this space. But they can be valuable, right? And so that's the other type. And then the third type, I guess, is really just what is my core audience that gets a lot of that has a lot of opportunity, high search volume, right? Can just get me a lot of traffic, and sort of fits my core audience.
And again, it probably goes without saying for you, but I'll say it because a lot of people, listening potentially can forget how interconnected niche pursuits is, right? Like, it's not just about ranking the article and getting the affiliate commission from that article, but you also have an email list that you drive people to the email list. And then from the email list, podcast grows. From the email list, you can also move into other products and other types of things. So it's really so interconnected that it's not just about, say, ranking that best of article, getting the affiliate commission and moving along.
100%. And so, people probably generally understand my business model, but just to say it explicitly, right, is yes, I want a ton of traffic. And I actually just added display ads
I was
on
going to ask you about that.
nichepursuits.com,
I was going to ask you about that.
right?
That's
And
another question.
so, informational articles are now making money, every day. I make affiliate commissions. From that, I make affiliate commissions on my email list, right? I can send an email related to a product. So even if traffic is coming to an informational article that is not monetized, I'm cool with that, right? If it's related to digital marketing, they might get on my email list. They might then eventually buy a digital product. But the real kicker here is that those people might be interested in my products, Link Whisper, right? Yep. They might, if they're initially searching for something about WordPress, how do I fix this in WordPress? And they land on an article on nichepursuits.com. That's a great visitor. And if they end up on my email list, even if they don't buy anything for a year, if they turn around and then buy Link Whisper, that's a huge backend product for me, right? And so it's all very connected. And so, even though I've got display ads, that is, sort of bottom of the end of the spectrum of like what I really care about. But it is bringing a nice amount of money just because I have a ton of articles that, as I follow Google leads, right, there are some articles that's like, I don't know if that person is ever going to be interested in Link Whisper. Like it's kind of sort of related, but I'll just make the display ad revenue on that visitor.
Well, it's really taking you almost, I don't want to say went about it backwards, because that would absolutely not be the right way to say it. But like, Niche Pursuits was a brand well before you embarked on this growth strategy, but you've really, like, what you have in front of you, especially over the last year, and then the interview we have here recapping the last year, is a lesson in how to create a brand online, not just how to grow a blog, and your blog has grown tremendously, but the traffic pales in comparison when you compare that to what the impact has been on your traffic, your email subscribers, podcast growth, Link Whisper growth, probably, and revenue, because you've built a brand that benefits multiple layers from each thing that you're doing. And it's just, again, it's a great walkthrough for everybody listening. It's, if you're brand new at starting a website, getting $100 a day from Mediavine is a huge accomplishment. But think about all the other ways that you can monetize and grow that traffic down the road, because at some point, it could just be the tip of the iceberg, like you're saying, for your traffic.
Right. And so if I were to give advice to anybody sort of starting out, is I think the better route is to build a brand, right? To almost, even though it's taken me so many years to really like tap into like huge Google traffic, like in the beginning, maybe don't worry too much about SEO traffic. Build a brand, do something interesting, get people to join your email list, to follow you on Twitter, to recognize you as the face of your brand, because they become loyal to you as a person and as a brand. And if you sort of share your personality, even if it's, sharing income updates, right, or things that are never going to rank in Google like I did, I wouldn't call that a mistake, of everything that I did. That's built a very healthy brand, a great following, podcast listeners, people that look to me for advice and tips and strategies, right? And now that I have that base, I can kind of build and grow traffic and do a whole lot more. But I really am funneling all of that back into the email list and the bigger brand, so that I'm not just reliant on Google, right? Because if I had this website that's getting 20,000 visitors a day and it's all from Google and I don't have an email list, I don't have a brand, that's a very scary business. But me putting 1,000 articles to try and grow the Google traffic, I can do that because I've got this nice base, right?
You almost answered the question, but I'll ask it. If you could, what do you think out of the different areas of the Niche Pursuits brand, the traffic to the website, the email list, the YouTube channel, the podcast, probably missing one or two, but what do you think is the most valuable out of all those to the brand?
Yeah, hands down, it's the email list.
Yeah. And that's what you kind of were hinting at earlier.
Yeah, which is crazy, but so it's like if I were to put my whole website and all the traffic on a table and my email list on another table, and I can only choose one table, like I would probably give up the whole website and just say, I'm keeping the email list. As crazy as that sounds,
Wow.
like that's how valuable it is, because I can't really reach everybody with my, if I didn't have my email list and I just published an article on my blog, 1,000, 2,000 people might read that, right? But if I send one email, it reaches significantly more than 1,000 or 2,000 people.
What I don't need exact numbers and like that, but what has like we've talked so much about how you've grown the website traffic. What have the effects been in other areas? Like what kind of email growth have you gotten? What kind of growth on YouTube or the podcast or maybe revenue? Like what other numbers have changed as a byproduct of your focus on growing organic traffic?
Yeah, so the email list has grown. It's probably grown, 20, 25%, something like that, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot. And I wish it was higher. I wish I was getting more opt-ins every day, but the number of opt-ins every day are definitely going up thanks to the increased traffic. The YouTube channel has grown primarily thanks to you, Jared, and the podcast. The podcast has seen growth. Again, because I've removed myself and now it's finally consistent and it's got a great structure, and people can turn to that and get value from that. And so the podcast,
and really the YouTube channel really is like the podcast. I think
it is.
I don't check it religiously, but I don't need to see myself. But that's most of what the YouTube channel really is. So you could probably kind of merge the podcast and YouTube channel together into one channel, really.
Yeah, and so those have seen growth. I've seen growth on Twitter, and that's not because of me publishing more content on Niche Pursuits, though. That's just because I've been more active on Twitter. But maybe I'm more active on Twitter because now I have time to be active on Twitter finally. Just the final thing I'll say is that I said maybe my email list is the most valuable. Probably the podcast is the second most valuable.
Man, after all that growth, and I just think it goes back after all the growth you've had in the website, I think maybe the bigger highlight is how you've done a really good job connecting that traffic to the other areas of your business. Because if you hadn't connected that traffic to the overall brand, then you probably wouldn't be sitting here saying that. I've got to imagine, but the fact that it's not just about getting the traffic, but how you've connected that to the other areas of the brand, that probably really makes the success story even better.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So it's the brand, the podcast, the email list, those are great. Those have driven a lot of growth in Link Whisper and other businesses that I've been involved with. And this year has again been all about growing the traffic finally, and turning just the traffic into a true source of revenue, a great source of revenue. And I'd love to continue that over the next year. I'd love to double it again this year. If I can be getting 1 million visitors a month on Niche Pursuits, like that would just be amazing.
Well, 2023, you like big goals. Should we just throw it out there? 5,000 articles.
There you go. Take my goal, 5X it. I like the way you think. I do have big goals. It's not quite 1,000 articles, but it still will be a very healthy, I'm probably going to do close to 700 articles plus a lot of content updates. So I'm going to kind of keep that machine running at what I think is an efficient process to do there. And then I have some other big ideas as well outside of just publishing more content, in terms of, I'd like to maybe invest in some other ideas or try some other sort of fun side hustle ideas, and maybe even do some more dedicated YouTube videos, produce some more interesting content on YouTube and grow that channel, because I do feel like video, it's already here. I feel like video is the future. I love blogs. I love reading. I love content. That'll always be near and dear to my heart. But I have to be honest, when I look at the younger generation, I look at my kids, they go to YouTube as a search engine. They type in something, they go there for entertainment. And so if I truly want to tap into that younger generation, the video search, I need to be on YouTube. And so I feel like I'm going to put a lot of effort into growing that channel this year.
2023, maybe the year of video for niche pursuits.
That's right.
Yep. Very good. Any final thoughts on 2022 in recap, and where things are going in 2023?
So I will just say that people shouldn't be afraid to set big goals. Set a big goal, find some people to motivate you, maybe a little mastermind group. I've had a couple bloggers that I've worked with, buddies that we chat about this. And I went through the first half of this year seeing very little growth. I was publishing, 80, 90 articles a month and seeing very little growth. It was growth, but not like, oh my goodness, I'm spending this much money on 80 articles a month. Is this really worth it? Type growth.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I had a couple buddies that are like, you just need to stick with it. Trust me, this SEO game takes a long time. And I know that. But again, people can do the calculations in their head for how much money I was spending, right?
Unfortunately, I was just doing it. I'm like, woo.
And these are not small little articles, right? These are not, in this industry, you can't get away with publishing 1,000, 1,500 word article. It doesn't happen, right? And so these are in-depth, good writers. So it's very scary. And so setting goals that you can achieve, having people to encourage you, not to do anything stupid, but to stick with your goals.
Yeah.
And then it was really in July, August, September that I finally started to see all of this growth. And by then I was like, I am so glad I stuck with this, because had I not, this growth probably would not have happened. And so that's sort of the final tidbit that I guess I'll share, is just that set big goals, stick with it, have people around you to keep you motivated, and the growth can come in time. And I don't remember if there was a second part to your question there or not.
No, any final thoughts on 2023? You've shared about YouTube, and you've shared basically the engine. You're going to keep going at 700 articles plus the updates.
Yep.
I would dovetail that also, and maybe this will be my final question for you on it, is it's funny because we started the conversation today by recapping what we talked about a year ago. And a year ago, it was really all about removing yourself from a lot of processes. There's a tendency when you see people at the top of an organization start to remove themselves, there's actually a tendency, because they have more time, for more projects to get created, and you seem to have done a good job about staying really focused on niche pursuits, Link Whisper, and just really letting the other things, not that you're not just a part of them, but you actually let them really just take care of themselves. And you didn't dive into any new projects. You might have, but from what it looks like, you really stayed focused on niche pursuits. And I think that's also something that, avoiding the shiny object syndrome to some degree and staying true to your goal. Yeah, you needed motivation along the way, but you actually had to stick with something for a full year and not see a new idea along the way and deviate.
Yes, that has been my mantra all year, is don't start any new projects. I'm looking at a, potentially huge business. I've got a great brand. Invest in this brand. And that's what I decided, before 2022 started, is I will not start any new projects. And I did not. And that's really hard, because I was presented with a lot of really great opportunities. I invested in a couple of ideas, but I was very clear that I am not going to operate or be involved in these businesses, right? Here's some money, you do it. So I'm going to probably continue to do that in 2023, where my biggest focus is on niche pursuits. It's on Link Whisper, growing those, but I'm going to allow myself, I shouldn't say start something new, because everything that I'm going to start will dovetail and be content for nichepursuits.com.
Yeah.
Right. So if I start a little side hustle, like for example, I've tweeted about this. I learned about the Amazon influencer program and you can create videos and make money directly on Amazon. Maybe I'll talk about this more in the future, but that's a little side hustle that I think the Niche Pursuits audience would like to hear about. And so I'm going to try that on my own. I'm going to create some videos. I'm going to try and make a little bit of money with the Amazon influencer program. Then I'm going to share what I learned through YouTube and blog, right? So anything new that I do start, that's my requirement, is it has to be good content for Niche Pursuits.
Makes sense. Well, congratulations on 5xing your organic traffic. Maybe that'll be the headline for the interview. But I mean, like you said, like 20,000 sessions a day at the time of recording is absolutely amazing. And like with every good story, like, halfway into this year, it sounds like it was not crickets, but just nowhere near the kind of growth that we're talking about today. So, and I'm glad you shared all the details. Like, you really got into some of the details. So I learned a lot. Thanks for coming on. And hopefully we'll do this again before 2023 is over.
Yeah. No, this has been a lot of fun, Jared. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate your support as listeners. Jared does a great job. Here's to a great 2023 to everybody and their goals. And hopefully what I've shared with Niche Pursuits can just be a little bit of inspiration for people as they set their goals, whether that's big publishing goals or otherwise. I'm going to just keep trucking along and hopefully see some more growth here.
It's great. It's great. And the fun thing about it is we all know how to follow along on what you're doing, and so it really is a build in public kind of scenario here.
Absolutely. Yep. Follow along at nichepursuits.com. So thanks a lot,
Spencer.
Jared.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. It's Spencer Hawes here, founder of the Niche Pursuits podcast. So I recently read a Twitter thread asking about the most underrated strategy in SEO. One of the most common answers given was internal link building. The reason? Well, sometimes people put so much emphasis on external links, they forget that not only do internal links provide relevancy and SEO benefits, but that Google actually encourages you to build internal links. Now, I get it. Building internal links can often feel time-consuming and boring. And that's why I created Link Whisper. Link Whisper is a powerful WordPress plugin that makes building internal links so much faster and easier. You can quickly get relevant internal link suggestions as you write, and with the simple check of a box, add one or multiple internal links to your articles. And perhaps my favorite time saver is the ability to see how many internal links all my articles have, and to quickly get new internal link suggestions to articles I want to boost in Google. With comprehensive internal link reporting and the ability to add links with the simple check of a box, I can't even imagine going back to building internal links manually. Link Whisper is by far the most powerful, effective, and easiest to use internal link building tool out there. Give it a try, and if you don't agree, I'll give you your money back, no questions asked. In fact, for podcast listeners only, I'm offering a $15 off discount. Just go to linkwhisper.com and use discount code PODCAST at checkout to save $15. So as the creator of Link Whisper, I might be a little biased, but I highly recommend that you head over to linkwhisper.com today to check it out. Again, that's linkwhisper.com, and be sure to use discount code PODCAST at checkout. Thanks again.